Revisited horrific visions are here, and this is going to be a great opportunity to gear up your alt characters for raiding or M+. So in this video, I wanted to run through the various methods we can take to gear those characters up. There's going to be two approaches we can take. First of all, the alt character you want to gear can play the content itself, and it'll be able to get some gear from doing that, and we'll talk more about that how in a moment. But alternatively, you can also use your geared main characters or geared alts to help funnel gear to that alt character, and we'll talk more about that in a moment as well. But there's going to be two methods, which means we could, in theory, get an absolute ton of gear for this character and potentially have it decked out in champion gear at minimum. So first of all, let's talk about your playing the alt character and how it can get gear itself. There's going to be 3 vendors outside of the vision. There's going to be a veteran weapon vendor, a champion weapon vendor, and a heroic weapon vendor. However, the heroic weapon vendor is a little bit more difficult to use, and probably most people aren't even going to get any use out of this vendor apart from the BOA book that you can buy. So the veteran weapon is going to be from an achievement called incremental progress, which all you need to do is go inside a vision, kill 2 of the bosses or the mini bosses, and then kill the final boss. You clear out 2 sections, for example the trade district and Old Town. You go to Illyria, you finish that, you'll get the achievement, and now you can pick up yourself veteran weapons. This may be difficult on a freshly leveled character, but as we progress through the tree, you're going to have access to way more power, you're going to have access to the tributes as you max those out, so it's just going to be a lot more easy to get this done. The champion weapon vendor is one that's probably going to be more used, and to get this finished we do need to do a mask run. So a mask run is you'll put on a mask and you'll clear out all 4 objectives and the final boss, and then once that is complete you'll get the achievement allowing you to buy the champion gear. Once again, in the early stages this is going to be a little bit more difficult for your alt character to achieve, but one of the masks I could potentially recommend is the Nemesis mask, and you will need to pick up one of the shards this week from Stormwind, which is going to be outside of the mage district. There's going to be a poster on the wall, you click that, Hogger will spawn and you'll loot the shard. And then next week when we're in Orgrimmar, one of the first buildings on the right will have an axe on the table, Gammon will spawn, you'll kill him, you'll get the second shard, and we can combine them together for the Nemesis mask. And the thing about the Nemesis is it's going to spawn an elite every 25-ish mobs you kill. That doesn't sound too helpful, maybe a little bit difficult, but the nice thing about this is an elite that it spawns, and if you max out the tributes you'll be getting 50, 100 or 150 sanity back. So this can be really handy because it's going to be a consistent sustain of sanity from killing that elite. The elite may be a little bit too difficult for your character, so maybe you'll want to swap off that, but if you think you're fine with handling it and you're struggling with sanity, then this can be a great way of sustaining you through a run. But once you get that 1 mask run done, you can now pick yourself up a champion piece. The final one will be for clearing out a 5 mask run, and doing this will give you access to the heroic weapon vendor. But honestly, I think this is still going to be a little bit too difficult for our undergeared characters, even at later stages. But if you do want to give it a try, I would definitely recommend avoiding masks like the Mask of the Long Night, which is going to reduce your max sanity, Mask of the Daredevil, which is going to increase the sanity damage you take, and then it depends on your kind of preference, but Mask of the Pain can be tricky if you're not good at dealing with 2 affixes, or Mask of Multitudes can be difficult if you're not good at dealing with large amounts of mobs, or also combining Mask of Multitudes and also Mask of Vengeance together can be quite deadly because Mask of Vengeance is going to bolster enemies when one enemy is killed. So if there's a ton of mobs, you're going to end up with a really strong bolstered enemy. So combining those together is probably something you want to try to avoid. But the other masks I didn't mention should be pretty good to have on, so I would definitely recommend looking at those ones. But one thing that's important to know is that doing this achievement on your main character doesn't give it to your alt. You do have to do this achievement on your alt character to be able to access this vendor. Hopefully this is something that's changed, but currently it is tied to the character specifically. There are going to be more opportunities for your alt to gear itself though, and that is from doing the visions themselves. Each difficulty you do of the vision will give a unique piece of gear for the week. So for example, if you were to do a run where you just kill the last boss, you run straight to the last boss, you'll get a piece of veteran gear, and then that method will be locked for the week. If you kill that last boss again just on its own, you won't get a piece, but then if you were to do 1 objective and the last boss, now you're going to get another piece of veteran gear. And then if we do 2 objectives and kill the last boss, we're going to get a 3rd piece of veteran gear, and then that character is going to be locked on veteran gear for that week. When it resets next week, you'll be able to access those 3 pieces of veteran gear in the same method again. And then we'll be able to access 4 pieces of champion gear. That will be from doing a full run, so 4 objectives plus the last boss with no mask active. That'll give us a champion piece. Do a full clear with 1 mask will give us champion, a full clear with 2 masks will give us champion, and a full clear with 3 masks will give a champion. So we can get 4 pieces of champion gear by filling out these individual criteria. And then finally, if we do a full clear with 4 masks, we'll get a hero piece at 652, and if we do a full clear with 5 masks, we'll get a hero piece at 658. So that's going to be very, very difficult, but once your character does start to get mostly champion geared with a couple of hero pieces and we have the trees maxed out and all the masks, you will be able to do this. You will be able to fill out some of those slots of hero if you don't want to jump into M+. But I did mention your main character will be able to help gear your alt characters, and that is going to be through one main method. So once you reach those achievements that I talked about earlier to unlock that vendor, it's actually going to have 2 items we can pick up. From the champion weapon vendor, once you've done a full clear with 1 mask active on your main character, you'll now have access to a book that we can purchase, and using this book will make any pieces of veteran gear that character gets warbound. So now we can do those 3 pieces of veteran I mentioned earlier from doing just the main boss, the 2 objectives, the 1 objective, and that will give us 3 pieces of veteran that we can put in our war bank. And then if we unlock the hero vendor, which is from doing a full clear with 5 masks active, we'll have access to a book that will now make the champion gear that drops for that character warbound. So that means we can get 4 pieces of champion gear to send to our alts, and 3 pieces of veteran gear each week if we do 7 runs on those various different difficulties. There is, however, a catch. If you do this on a character that is leather, it's going to only have leather gear drop. It will get accessories and trinkets and things like that it can put in for general use, but if you're trying to gear a druid but your main character is a warrior, then that's not going to be very compatible because your warrior is going to get plate gear. So this is going to work best if you have a main character or a very good geared character that is the same armor type as the alt that you're trying to gear. But if you do have a setup like that, you mainly play leather characters and you have a monk and demon hunter that are already pretty geared and you want to start a rogue or a druid, now you can be funneling 8 pieces of champion gear from your monk and demon hunter over to those characters, and then those characters can do their own runs to get another 4 pieces of champion gear as well. So they're potentially coming out with 12 pieces of champion gear from just doing 12 horrific vision runs. Unfortunately, the hero gear is always going to be locked to the character that does it. There's going to be no way of making that warbound, but if you do get the setup, and as I said, if you're not able to do this week, I think in a couple more weeks, once we have the tree maxed or near maxed, we have the tributes maxed out, and we have access to all the masks, you'll find this stuff to be a lot more difficult, especially when we get the greater horrific visions corruption enchant as well, which is something else you'll want to be putting on your alt characters too. That'll give them a little bit of extra power there as well. In terms of how that works, it's going to be a quest that we get on the first week. You'll get a quest to go through the visions for the lesser enchant, and then next week we should get the follow-up quest once we've completed Orgrimmar to have the kind of go back into the visions with a mask on, I believe, and you keep running the mask runs over and over. You'll fill out that quest, and now you'll have access to these greater enchants which you can put on your helm, and these will be warbound, meaning you can purchase one and send it to your alt character. It's also worth noting as well that doing high mask runs will be getting you gilded crests, doing kind of mid-tier runs will be getting you runed crests. That's a little bit of a way of getting some crests on the go as well. And if we combine this with the Hallowfall event where we can get that weekly piece of champion gear and you can get a ton of veteran gear from that too, then our alt characters should be able to gear very, very quickly. We can start running them through dungeons. We can do the Dinar quest and pick up a piece of hero gear from the raid or dungeon. We're going to be able to get our characters up to scratch pretty quick, so this patch is nice for that. Either way though, I hope this helped you out. If you've got any questions, feel free to leave them down below. And outside of that, look out for more guides coming soon. Thanks for watching, guys. See ya.